All right, folks, we are ready. Another edition to Celtics Beat. Adam Kaufman, Chris Forsberg, good friend of the program, good friend of mine, good friend of yours. You know, here's the thing, really. I don't think, and this is a compliment. It's really the highest compliment, Chris. I'm not sure I've ever come across anyone who's had a bad word to say about you.
Ooh, so it's funny you say this. A couple years ago, when I was still at ESPN, I had to do a story on Al Horford, and I was really struggling to come up with like a story idea for it. And I'm talking to his agent, and I'm like, what's the story with Al? Like, what's the overarching theme that I'm missing here? And I'm like, what? The thing is, no one's ever said anything bad about him. So I legitimately went to every person I could find in every team, and I said, tell me something bad about Al Horford, and no one had anything. And then I went to Al, and I said, Al, no one has ever said anything bad about you. He's like, well, there's some people out there. I was like, well, who? And he's like, well, I can't name them off the top of my head. I was like, no, because everyone likes you. It's sort of the same way. I won't name names. I'm sure there are people that hate me. And I'm sure I have unintentionally been a jerk to somebody, but I try not to. And I mean, just sort of the way I hope I operate. But, I guarantee there's people out there that don't like me.
See, there are enough people out there that think I'm a jerk that they'll tell me right to my face, which I appreciate at least, because you don't have to wonder, you don't have to guess. They can just
come into my Twitter
right
mentions.
Out there.
Like, Twitter is a great place to just check your confidence meter and check your ego. There's plenty of people out there that'll let me know I'm stupid and don't know basketball, but that's fine.
Well, you know how it works too, and like especially in our business, and I say that because we're just what we do. We're just very front facing. In our industry, I mean, like I'd rather that, like, tell me I suck, tell me I'm a jerk, tell me I'm an a-hole, tell me I'm whatever, like, versus saying it behind my back. Like, say it to me. I'm good with that.
My favorite is when everybody gets mad, they read like Shaughnessy or whatever in the morning, and they're like, oh, this guy is such an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, but you open the Boston Globe, it's the first thing you're going to read because you love the way Dan Shaughnessy makes you feel about things. And like, that's what the great ones do. Felger on the radio, like, yeah, is there a little bit of tweaking and pushing buttons and stuff like that? Of course, but that's what we all want, and that's all we all crave for. So yeah, sometimes I always equate it back to wrestling. Like I always want, if I was going to be a wrestler, I wanted to be a heel. I want the crowd screaming and jeering at me, and I don't know. I'd have to really change the personality up. But let me know. I'll cut a promo against Kaufman and say like, candy ass can't hang with me.
Exactly. We'll fight on this show, and then we'll cross promote. We'll go on your show on NBC Sports Boston. We'll fight on that show, and we'll just awesome. Bring it back and forth.
Ping pong. That's all you do.
It'd be a perfect thing. It's a good way to just pub for both podcasts. I'm excited, Chris. I'm excited. Well, in part because if anyone is watching, if you're seeing the video versus listening, whichever way, as long as you're tuned in, we appreciate you, obviously. But if you're seeing us, you're seeing one, how good Chris looks right now, whether it's the flow, the shades, the fancy, albeit pixelated or whatever word would be, blurred out background. Whereas I'm sitting here looking about as pale as I possibly could be. It's really accentuated by the lighting as well. Like, I am more tan than this, but you wouldn't know it, and I don't expect you to believe it because perception's reality. But you just look well rested, which excites me because the season's a month away, at least preseason games. We are 1 month away as we talk right now.
I'm in one way, it's like, you're going back to school, and my kids just did first day of school, so I get that feeling of, oh boy, and like hopefully it's a little bit more normal. I'm eager to see what the NBA drums up for coverage. I haven't been to a game since March of 2020, which is weird to say, but yeah, I'm eager to get going. It was so funny. We were talking before we jumped on here, and I told you I disappeared to South Carolina with sort of the last gasp of summer, and my kids, right before they go back to school, we go down and visit my mom down there, and you come back and like it's the complete doldrums. I'm like desperate for NBA content. It was like so busy while I was down there, and I have this guilt for my employer because I disappeared as Marcus Smart's re-signing and Rob Williams extension and all the Josh Richardson extension that I didn't even know about. And then I come back and it's like crickets. So yeah, I'm ready to ramp up. I need some Jason Tatum weight room videos and whatever else we can do to get excited about this season.
He does look swole, doesn't he? It's unreal. Like he's going full Giannis from when Giannis came into the league versus what he looks like now. This is the transformation that the greats make.
And I'm eager to see how it translates onto the court. I mean, it's easy to get worked up about one good angle, as everyone knows. You can make yourself look pretty good on Instagram all you want, but there's no hiding
Thank you for
muscles.
checking out my page. I appreciate that.
I mean, dude's out here looking like Shemi Ojale at this point with his combat muscle. So I want to see how it translates. Does he get better going to the basket and finishing through contact? Does he just get ability to defend more at the 4 position, which it's clearly something that can wear you down a little bit. Something I'm actually worried about with this team, but. Yeah, like the Tatum to go from right out of Tokyo and just sort of immerse himself in the weight room. Kudos to him, because he's about to get his big paydays about to kick in and all that. But no, Jason Tatum's out there working. If you're a Celtics fan, that should be maybe the most exciting part about what's ahead.
We always talk about it, especially when it comes to the All-Stars on this team. And as we know, that's Jason Tatum. It's Jaylen Brown. They're, Brown technically not an All-Star yet, but he basically is. He's at that level. He just, hasn't quite gotten over the hump as far as being voted in. But these two guys, borderline all NBA as well, at least in Tatum's case. And I believe they both have that ceiling. What do you suppose, as far as both of them, but we may as well start with Tatum because we were just talking about him. Every summer, this time around, we spend time talking about, okay, like they're really good. These guys have the potential to be top 15, top 25 players in the NBA, but still you got to continue to develop while you're young. What is the thing that you, in your mind, at least if you're them, you're working on this summer to build off of where you are in your career right now to get you ready for the next season?
Yeah, invariably I come back to just playmaking with both of them. I think we know like there's the skill sets they have are top level in the NBA, and whether it's Tatum scoring or Jaylen's ability at both ends, but I'm eager to see how they make each other better, how they make their teammates better, how they fit with the pieces that are going to be there this year. Like, can they make Marcus Smart better? Can Marcus Smart make them better? That's what the great superstars do. It's not just about putting up big numbers. It's making people around you better. It's using the attention you're drawing to make things easier, for your teammates, or in Jayson and Jaylen's case, each other. So that's all I want to see. I want to see them, be better passers. I want to see them, when that double team comes, be able to kick to the corner and be confident in whoever is taking that shot. And I want to see that person make that shot, whether it's Aaron Nesmith or Romeo Langford or whoever it is. Like, I want to see everybody sort of elevating because those guys are so good and they draw so much attention. You can nitpick little things. I think Tatum, I would like to see be more aggressive going to the basket, using that length, finishing through contact, but being able to dig in defensively. Like, they're both very, very good defensively, but because of their size, they can be elite at that position. But ultimately, I go back to playmaking. It's an unfair comparison, but I look at the way Kawhi Leonard and Paul George rack up assists, and I want Jayson and Jaylen to do that.
It's something that obviously new head coach Ime Udoka has been talking a lot about, wanting to make these guys, take them to that next level. He is fixated on playmaking, as you're talking about. The aggressiveness thing, I think, is really interesting because it's something that, for anyone that follows along on Twitter, I mean, I've been harping about that with Tatum for years. Like, you have the ability, you have the strength to get to the free throw line because, then at that point in time, you're a good shooter as well. You'll make the shots. I mean, it's just such an easy for me to say, obviously, but for a player of that caliber, it's such an easy way to take your game to another level is simply being more aggressive. But what I wonder, I guess, is how much of that it sort of comes back to coaching and coaching philosophies and game plans and approaches. We know over the last 8 years what kind of head coach Brad Stevens was. I guess we have to say now, if he's never going to do this again, current president of basketball operations, we know what his approach has been, what his mindset is, and how it's related to the players, at least that he has coached to this point. We don't know these things definitively about Udoka yet. We're waiting, we're finding out, and it'll be exciting when we get a chance to see. Do you think that Udoka could, is it as simple as, not flipping a switch per se, but just coaching a guy a little bit differently to say, we don't want you to settle for that three. We, like Brad was all about you guys taking 3-pointers all the time, and that's today's NBA, and that's all well and good. Well, you know what? I'm going to coach a little bit differently. I don't want you taking 43s a game. I want you taking 23s a game. And so, Jayson, I don't want you taking quite as many. I don't want you shooting 7, 8 3-pointers per game. I want you going to the line, or at least going to the basket, maybe getting to the line half those attempts. And let's see you average 8 free throws a game.
Yeah, and it just comes down to like that. I mean, I think that a voice will help. I think that's part of the reason Brad stepped aside, and that they needed to hear someone else yell at them like that. Maybe someone else who could get on them a little bit more than Brad was either willing or capable of. And so I am eager to see that. I don't know what Ime's philosophy is going to be offensively. I think we know, like, defensively, that's been his calling card at other stops. And I'm pretty confident with the pieces they have, they can be successful there. It's going to have to be really creative offensively, because I don't know, like, short of Jayson and Jaylen scoring a whole bunch of points a night, 70 plus points between them, like, it's going to be tough for this team to put up 100, because there's just not a lot of other surefire scoring options out there, at least if, especially if Jayson and Jaylen are getting the attention that they get. So, but like Tatum in general, I think, I'm going to go back. I've all these numbers blur together after the season, but I'm sure there's the number of drives, number of free throw attempts. Like, when he gets to the line, it's a different game. He makes scoring 30 so easy when he gets to the line 6 times a game, 8 times a game, whatever the number is. And then when he gets there like 15 times, it's a whole game changer. So they got to be aggressive. I think there were times when naturally they're so talented, they can create their own shot from the perimeter, but they just got to be more aggressive going to the basket. The great teams live at the line. Everyone hates watching the Nets because Kyrie's there and Harden's there and all that, Durant's there. So if you want to hang with those teams, got to make some easy baskets for yourself. And whether that's easy layups or physical layups or getting to the line, they need to do it more often.
On Tatum and Brown, Chris, it's a story that doesn't go away, and it's it's popular for sports talk radio, for talking heads, for doing what you do. It's been around obviously for a little while now. It's the whole, can Tatum and Brown coexist? And I mean, I think it's pretty apparent they can, because we've seen it for a number of years at this point. They've both been successful, but you still have, our friend Jeff Goodman, who's been on both our shows plenty, believes that, these are 2 guys that are not the closest off the floor. Not to say they're enemies or anything, but they're not, real friends, or they're not best friends. They're not necessarily, the dynamic you're looking for on the floor either, sort of talking about their relationship. Or you have, Kevin Garnett, whose number is going to be retired in a matter of months, saying that, I think they're redundant to one another. Cedric Maxwell was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago and said that he would still advocate trading away Jaylen Brown if you could get, say, a Karl Anthony Towns or something like that. Just to have 2 different types of players. Plenty of people think these guys are just either redundant or not quite the right cross section to one another. Brown was on the Up and Smoke podcast just a couple days ago, and wasn't asked about that specifically, but just talked about their relationship and how his brother, will babysit for Deuce, and it's like these guys are closer than you realize. Basically, is just way too much made of this.
Yeah, I think in general, didn't we just see Jaylen Brown chomping on Jason Tatum's gold medal out in the club after coming back and celebrating? Like, I think we all have this desire or perception or yearning for our superstars to be best friends and be like hanging out after games and crunching game film and doing all that. But that's just not the way it works. Like, these are millionaires and they've got families and they've got other priorities. And so I just think, in an ideal world, they'd have a relationship, but there's not saying that they can't have that in the film room when they're together on the court. They don't have to hang out every night. They don't have to go play Call of Duty every night together. I'm okay with that. Like, as long as it works on the floor. And that's what I come back to when people say, like, oh, they need another, you trade Jaylen because you'd rather have a good swingman and a good center, but you can have both. Like, they're still in position to make a move and add, whether, they think if Marcus isn't the point guard of the future, maybe they go get the point guard, maybe they get the big man. I think they still need a 4. Like, Robert Williams, we talked about potential all-stars. My feelings there.
Yeah, likewise.
So I just think they have the right mix. We've seen in this league, wings are super valuable. You don't just break it up because you're like, oh, we have 2 wings. Like, you need some diversity. No, it's just about talent. It's on them to figure out how to make it work. It's on Ime. It's on Brad. It's on Brad to find the right pieces around them. But yeah, I guess that's my biggest curiosity with the season. I know it's not a huge roster overhaul, but I think we all know, like, the fit with Kemba just wasn't right last year, and Kemba's availability made it tough.
Yeah.
Marcus has had a propensity to make at least Jaylen better. One of the highest assist to field goal, combinations in the NBA last year before Marcus got hurt. So do the pieces all fit better this year? Can they coexist? I don't know the answer, but I'm eager to find out. And but I do think that this whole notion that Jaylen and Jayson can't get the best out of each other, slightly overblown. But hey, they also got to prove it on the court.
So something you wrote about before you went on vacation, just to sort of pick up with what you were just talking about, is the fit of this roster as we know it right now, and it seems like it's ever changing with the moves that have been made since obviously Danny retired and Brad was elevated to that role. There have been a lot of changes, like you said, not a total overhaul, but a significant number of changes, I think, and potentially impactful in changes to this team. But looking at sort of fit and roles, and something you wrote about was that everybody understands their role, and you sort of compared it to a couple of years back when the 18-19 season was just a complete and total mess, because it was that sort of age old, there's one basketball and everybody wants it and all that sort of, and that was very true at the time. I guess where I push back a little bit on everyone knowing their roles right now is I agree with what you were saying with respect to sort of hierarchy on the roster, which didn't necessarily exist at that time. We know whose team it is right now. We know, generally speaking, who should have the ball and all of that. But I can't help but sort of look down the roster a little bit. You filter down, you go to the bench, and it's all right. Well,
just say it, Dennis Schroder. You're worried about
Schroder.
You're worried about Dennis Schroder.
Well, not even entirely, honestly. I mean, he's part of it, just because for him it is a contract year and he's the only guy that really applies to. But it's not just him. It's one of the things that I think people should be excited about it, and I've harped on this on other shows that we've had with other guests. One thing I think the Celtics should be excited about, and fans should be excited about, is the development of Pritchard, Nesmith, Langford, guys that showed out at Summer League. And yes, it's Summer League, but we saw flashes of it last year as well when they had opportunity. Now you've added, and this is a good thing, is what Brad wanted, but you added so much veteran presence to this team versus last year that now, if I'm those three guys in particular, I don't really know what my role is. I don't really know what I fit. I don't know. All I really know going into the season is like, shoot, I'm going to have to fight for minutes a lot more than I had to last year.
Yeah, but like if I'm a young player, and I'm not saying they want that, I think you certainly want the idea that, like, hey, if you're Peyton Pritchard, you say I shot nearly 40% on 3-pointers last year. I just showed out at Summer League and put up 92 points in a Pro-Am game. Like, I'm ready to be a bigger piece of this. And now I'm looking at the depth chart and thinking, yeah, where do I fit in behind, Smart, Schroder, Dunn? Like, it's crowded, but you know how you do it? You force the issue. You go out there and you keep making threes. You're one of the few guys on this team that can hit threes, can create threes for yourself, can show off that range. And then you make Ime Udoka play you. And, I'm okay with that with younger players. Certainly it's a little bit more convoluted if, you're an established player and your role is a little more cloudy. But like for Nesmith, Pritchard, Romeo, I mean, for Grant, like, come on. It's for me, it's like, show it, and that's the way you should motivate younger players. Now, Rob just got his money. I don't know what impact that will have. I think he should still have a desire to just show he can stay on the floor, that he can be sort of what we saw in game one of that Nets series. But the point there though is that, when you look back at that 18-19 team, they had so much talent, like an absurd. Now looking at it from Kyrie, Jaylen, Jayson, Al, like Gordon, Terry, Marcus Morris, like absurd amount of talent. Guys that are making, I mean, someone had the number, how much money they've signed for over the last couple of years, and it's absolutely like mind numbing. But it just didn't work because everybody had a desire. Like Jaylen was pissed because he's in the corner and not getting any touches, and Kyrie's thinking about going to Brooklyn, and Al's got his like future decision looming all of this, and he got to the point where he was like, screw it, I just want to get to find this payday. And
Terry wants to be a starter.
Yes, so like
Tatum's entitled from the playoff run the year before.
Everybody had their own motivation or reason for not playing to their ability, and it just did not gel together. When I look at this Celtics team, I look at the starting five, where if you roll out Marcus, Jaylen, Jayson, say Richardson is in there, or if it's Nesmith or Al or whoever, and Rob, every single person sort of knows their future. Now, Al's a little bit tenuous. He knows he can be traded at any point because of that non-guaranteed money, but like, that's just part of it. He went from sort of Siberia and Oklahoma City with their youth movement to like at least having a chance to compete now. And he's rested, and he'll get a chance to sort of reestablish his value and, maybe land in a good situation. So, I just think everybody has less on their mind this year. And the other part of it is last year was just like COVID ravage and injury ravage. Like, does health help this team sort of get back to what is possible? And so, nothing about last season do I think you should sit here and say, oh, that was a complete outlier, like that it was all extenuating the reasons this team struggled. No, there were issues that, need to change. And, but I'd be lying if I'm not eager to just see how it looks now in a more, where everybody's sort of knows their role. Somehow we went full circle with the wrestling and coming back to the Rock. But if everybody knows their role and is and understands the hierarchy and doesn't get outside themselves. Now, the big outlier in all this is Schroder. And this is the one reason I didn't love the signing, is that I do think you have a guy who quite clearly turned down $20 million a year, and his entire goal this season is going to be to get back to a level where he's making 20 million or plus a year, wants to be $100 million guy. How does he do that when he's not potentially a starter, when his desires offensively could conflict with what the team how it does its best? So eager to see, but it's also where, if it doesn't work, tradable asset. There will be playoff teams out there that will covet a player with that much talent. But he's the one guy where I'm like, he's got to really sort of check the ego at the door and buy into what Brad and Ime are trying to do.
That's the thing. It's just, that's where I get sort of, my brain goes into a pretzel, because I don't understand how you can serve both masters there. I don't understand how, like, people have written about it, like how Dennis Schroder can be the best version of himself, and that's the best thing he can do for the Celtics and fit right in. And it's like, well, great. If he does that and he's averaging 10, 12 points a game, and he's a playmaker, and he's not a distraction, he's a good teammate, good soldier, good whatever you want to classify it as, but he's largely coming off the bench and all of that. Fine, great. I mean, good for the Celtics, which ultimately is what I care about. But in what way is that going to lead him to a $80 million deal? It's not.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of money out there next year either. You've seen a lot of guys like Josh Richardson sign for essentially mid-level money because they know that second kind of cut of guys is not going to get the few pennies that are out there. So I think Schroeder does have to worry about that in terms of, even if he has a great year, is he going to get what he desires? He's just really sort of trying to play himself into one of those few teams that has money to spend in a market that will have less point guards than this past summer. Maybe he finds a situation. But my pitch to him, if I'm Brad Stevens and Ime Udoka, is let's roll it back to when you were in Oklahoma City, when you were sixth man of the year candidate, and like how much better.
But didn't he average like 18 points off the bench that year?
He did. And so, but look, the Celtics bench might need scoring. Like, I don't know who's scoring on this bench. If Nesmith starts, Josh Richardson and Schroeder could be like your main offensive weapons. Peyton, if he, depending on how much he plays, there might be an opportunity for him to take a bunch of shots with that second unit. But there is going to be a balance, and you might just have to be okay with, if the Celtics exceed expectations and if Schroeder's a part of that, then his value will just go up naturally. It's the same reason that, like, when teams have success, assistant coaches get better chances for head coaching jobs, because we have this, we just not trick ourselves, and some of them are largely deserving, but there's also this notion of like, wow, the Patriots win a lot, so their assistant coaches must be great as head coaches. Doesn't always work out. So, right. If Schroeder buys in, and that's going to be tough for him, I do think the riches await. And if not, again, they'll trade him to a contender, and it's a hard situation because teams aren't going to have his rights and aren't going to be able to pay him. But he's just got to be patient, and he's got to fire his agent for not getting him that. Or maybe it's just all on Schroeder. Maybe the agent was like, you really need to take this extension, and Schroeder just didn't do it and put himself in this position. But
I can almost picture like Nerlens Noel sitting there going, "Bro, don't you got to take it."
I don't think it was a coincidence that what was it, like a day after Schroeder signed, Marcus Smart signed his extension. Like, right. You know what? 4 years, $77 million sounds pretty good, and a starting role and some security. You don't want to, turn down, the golden offer when it's there, because you just never know what's ahead. And so, hey, that's why it's always a risk reward for all these guys, and Rob too. Like, I was stunned the number Rob signed for, but he's probably looking at it the same way that the Celtics did and said, you got to prove it. You got to stay healthy. And you're probably not going to have a huge market if you don't next year. So take your payday when you can.
So 3 words that you said before: if Nesmith starts, that is something that has not even been on my radar as a possibility.
Really?
I'm not saying it couldn't happen, obviously, but it's just not something that entering the season I've really been thinking much about. And I'm not a big, break down the starting 5, kind of guy as some people are, but I don't know. I guess I sort of came in feeling like I've got a pretty good idea what that starting five looks like. And Neesmith wasn't someone that was sitting
Who
there
you
for
got?
me. What I mean,
Who's
what
your
does this
fifth?
look like to you?
So I'm just saying, the question I throw back to everybody is like, who's your fifth slaughter? And I think we sometimes default to Richardson just because of what he's done in the league, and
Yeah.
that's fair. I do like the idea of like how good defensively that unit could be. I mean, from Marcus to Richardson to Jayson, Jaylen, Rob, like that's really, really good defense at every position, and no height disadvantage like you had in the sort of the Kemba era and IT era and Kyrie era, like every other small point guard era. But I
It could
wonder
be Schroder,
offensively.
couldn't it?
It could, and but I think when I think about and again, I've got to translate. I need to figure out what Ime Udoka looks for in lineups, and that's
Yeah.
part of what we'll find out this year. But I know Brad Stevens always defaults to what makes Jaylen and Jayson better. Well, if Jaylen and Jayson are on the court and they're drawing a whole bunch of attention, really all you need that other wing or guard or whoever it is out there to do is stand in the corner and be ready to hit 3-point shots.
Mhm.
So Josh Richardson, not been a strength the last 2 seasons. They seem pretty confident that when open, he can hit those shots. But again, we got to see it. It's not fair to say that like these 2 years in a row are an outlier. It's like
Yep.
you are what you are, and you are what the numbers say you are. He has shot well on open looks, and he'll get open looks. But I almost like him off the bench a little bit more. His ability to create off the dribble, and be again him and Schroder potentially being guys that can lead that second unit and take those shots when either Jaylen and Jayson are resting. Although I hope that Ime keeps one of them out there for most of the games. But I like Neesmith because again, you're not asking him to do a whole lot. You're just asking him to do what he did last year. Now he's got to ramp it up defensively if he's going to play with that first unit. And I love the intensity, but he does have to sort of get a little bit better and go to another level with his individual defense and team defense and staying consistent. But he's a big part of the future. If whether it's as a trade asset, I keep going back for it with him and Romeo and Peyton Pritchard. Like, if they're going to get another star, they need an attractive piece to go get. And so I think the Celtics do have to kind of be all in on not only can those guys be cheap complements to your core, but developing those guys for whatever's next, for being key pieces or being trade assets. So, I always thought last year Brad should have been a little bit more willing to play Neesmith early on. It was clear this team was going to take some lumps, especially early as it was getting healthy and without Kemba. And then it was weird because then Neesmith got the opportunity at the end of the year when things were sort of falling apart and they're clawing just to get into the playing game. So, but maybe the early part of this year, you just see how it looks, and maybe it's bad. Maybe you got to go to a more veteran presence. But the other option is like, does Al and Rob work together in the front court?
I was just going to say that one too. It's less likely because the Celtics are more inclined to go small than big, but that's another thing. I mean, you could have Smart, the Jays, and those two guys.
Yeah, and so I don't know. This is why I think the 4 spot is a little bit. I'm a little surprised they haven't upgraded there, and whether it's even just someone coming off the bench. That's no disrespect to Grant, but Grant needs to be more consistent and hasn't quite developed from. I mean, there were some times in the bubble where he was really good, but I'm not confident he could be your fifth starter right now. Just hasn't shown the ability to know and thrive at that 4 spot. He's probably better suited as an undersized 5, but. That's what they got to figure out is what is the best combination. I just keep going back to it. I think when Jaylen and Jayson are out there, Neesmith can really make their lives easier if he makes shots. If Richardson sort of finds an ability to shoot 37% beyond the 3-point arc, it's a moot point. Maybe it's better to go with him. But and I'm just not sold on double big. I just don't know if Al at the 4 can be a thing anymore, especially when you don't have an Aaron Baines type at that. Like, I love Rob, but I just think there's the right mix of players when Al's at the 4, and I'm not sure Rob's the perfect complement. But again, eager to see it.
I tell you, for the money they paid him, and it's a fine contract, it could wind up being a steal. All he has to do is stay on the floor, and the per 36 numbers are going to be there. But for what they're paying him, he better be starting. Like, he better be the no doubt about it starter for the Celtics that I've been advocating for the last 2.5 years at this point in time. But now, especially with the payday, there can't be any mystery there.
No, and I think in the same way when it was so funny when in the aftermath of Marcus signing that deal, people were going, well, Marcus Smart is going to be the starting point guard on this team, and it's like, well, no bleep, you're not paying the guy $17 million a year to be a backup, and Schroeder's here, but he's not a long-term thing. You're investing in these guys because you're hopeful that they're pieces of your core and that you have the right mix and that you can still add it's probably not a max contract type guy. It's probably more of a 18, $16 million a year guy. But you can potentially have a version of this team where it's Marcus, Jaylen, Jayson, Rob, and player X. And, I know we all default to Bradley Beal and all that. And doing that might force you to give up more assets depending on how the avenues they travel. But the point is, like, you're investing in those guys, and they've got to start, and they've got to show that they can be out there. They got to show that they complement Jayson and Jaylen well, and then you figure out the rest around them.
Again, something you were writing about even before the Smart and Williams extensions, but directly related to those, was, okay, if Brad Stevens elects to hand out those extensions this year to those two guys, so many people, this is what kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you, Chris, about social media or the, supposed cap experts. And when I say that, I don't mean like the Keith Smiths. I mean, like, internet cap experts who don't, who I'm talking about. I mean, there are a bunch of these people out there that it's like, you make a claim, you tweet something, you say something about, any potential flexibility to deal for or sign and trade or outright sign in free agency, a Bradley Beal type, or just a max veteran, a year from now, next summer. And they will quickly break down for you all the different ways that is not possible. And it's like, well, you're renouncing this guy. You can't re-sign this guy. You're gutting, these guys. And I always respond by saying, well, sure, if we're operating based on what the roster is right this very second, you're going to tell me Brad Stevens is going to make any changes in the next year that impacts what you're outlining for me? Well, you can't do that because it's still the same money, and these guys eat up, this salary and this percentage of cap. And it's like, to some degree, that's correct. But a lot of this stuff can be manipulated, not like the NFL salary cap, but you can still manipulate certain things. And certainly I trust a guy like Mike Zarin when it comes to, going down to the nickel about all this different stuff. And, that's why I enjoyed so much when you wrote the article about, if they extend Smart and they extend Williams, guess what? There's still a path. The Celtics get, because it's what I was screaming without the article to back it up. And then you wrote it and I could just send it to people. No, this is what I was talking about. So break it down for anyone out there that's a naysayer, a non-believer, as to why, just because you have, a different kind of flexibility situation right now, that the dream to add another superstar isn't dead.
Yeah. And now, first off, because I understand we spent the first month of the off season saying flexibility. And, if you're not a nerd like me and studying the numbers, like, then they go sign these extensions, you're thinking, wait, doesn't this run counter? And that's understandable. But just because of the way everything is set up, like Rob Williams, if he hadn't signed an extension, would go into next season, would have had an $11 million cap hold. In order for the Celtics to have re-signed him, they would have had to have kept $11 million essentially on their books, which would have prevented any path to cap space until they renounced their rights to him. And that's not something you wanted to do. So in the Celtics thinking, even if you extend him at anywhere near that cap hold number, you're not messing with any of your flexibility, and you're potentially locking him up at a price that could skyrocket if he had a great season. So I thought the Rob thing was legitimately like a slam dunk. And it was funny when people were like, no way, they're not going to do that. Because I deleted Twitter on vacation, I didn't go take a victory lap every time Marcus and Rob Williams. And then in Marcus's case, like, I know 17 million sounds like a lot for a starting salary, 77 million over 4 years, but we're going to look up in 2 or 3 years and we're going to be like, oh my God, he's making slightly more than mid-level money for a potential starting point guard who potentially makes your core better. And so the big thing here is that they have flexibility. I don't know if these guys are long-term fixtures, pillars, as Ime said, with Jayson and Jaylen, but they have a chance to be, and they could be low budget pillars for this team. And so if you do carry that through, if you have that quad of Marcus, Jaylen, Jayson, and Rob, there's still a path, if you get off Al Horford's money, to about $20 million in cap space as early as next offseason. Okay, you're probably not going and getting a Bradley Beal, but you can get someone, enticing. That's sort of throwing yourself in the mix for a Lonzo Ball type this past offseason at that money. It's adding a Marcus Smart type player. So they can still sort of get that another star that route. It's not the elite top of the line, but it's there. Now, if Bradley Beal's out there and that is something you want to do, but you don't want to break up Jaylen and Jayson, you got to get off Al's money, but you could move Marcus Smart, and then you're right back in the game for max room of adding someone like not Bradley Beal's full max because he'll be 10 years in, but you'll be in the neighborhood. And if he really wants to play with Jason Tatum that bad, he'll come for that amount of money. So the more likely scenario is a sign and trade where, you're still trading some combination of contracts here, whether that's Al or Rob or
Richardson
Neesmith
now
or,
too.
yeah, exactly. And so that's part of the reason when I sit there and say, man, I don't quite get this Richardson contract. Well, if he has a bounce back year and he's an attractive option, he's someone that might be wanted to throw into a deal. And it might not be for Bradley Beal, but it might be someone else out there. So yeah, they still have multiple paths here. I just don't think they encumbered flexibility by making these moves. In fact, I think they've guaranteed return on those assets. And if there was one thing that I could quibble with Danny Ainge, I thought Danny made a lot of great moves. From I contend from 2013 to probably the Kyrie trade, he was on the heater of all heaters for GM, where I just don't think he made a bad move. Like, I think if you go through and study all the trades, I can't tell you one that they lost.
Nope.
Like maybe letting Austin Rivers go. Like as crazy as that sounds, during there was a point where Austin Rivers got traded to Boston as part of like 95 moves in that 2013 season, I think it was. They maybe should have held on to him because he had some value as more than they got moving him out. But otherwise, it was spotless. And even the Kyrie trade was an absolute no-brainer. You do it because if you separate emotion from what they were potentially getting, that trade made all the sense in the world. And then in the aftermath, it all went to hell.
And it's not like, like look at it, and it's not his fault, but look at what Isaiah Thomas has been since.
Sure.
It's not like you were walking away from what he was.
And maybe in an alternate universe, things don't go as poorly for IT in the aftermath. Maybe he gets help, whatever, like that's a whole nother road. I feel, it's weird to go down there. There was a thread on, I think on Reddit this week about the curse of IT. And it makes me chuckle every time because, while I understand it, things have not gone well since that deal. You still make that trade 100 out of 100. And I loved IT more than anybody. No one was more fun to cover. No one was more influential in the stories I wrote. I miss that. I miss that guy. And I'm hopeful every time I see he gets a tryout, with the Mavericks this week or whatever, I'm crossing my fingers for him because I want him back in the league and I want him to get a chance. You saw him after that Pro-Am game, but that's a whole nother road. What we're saying here is the Celtics have flexibility moving forward. There's an option for them. And the one thing that Danny Ainge didn't do, I thought, was too often assets got away without returning value. So that whether that's Kyrie walking away, whether that's Al Horford walking away. And I think Brad took over this job and goes, I'm not losing any of these assets. So I got $10 million left on this Gordon Hayward trade exception. I'm going to get Josh Richardson and we're going to re-sign him and we're going to figure out a way to turn this into something, even if he doesn't rebound his career here. And we're going to lock up Marcus Smart because we're not just going to watch him walk away in the summer. And so I think it's asset management. And I don't know the path. I don't know where this is going to go. I think there's legitimate smoke with their, with Jason Tatum and Bradley Beal wanting to play together. But a lot of players want to play together. It doesn't come to fruition. But the point here is that the Celtics can make a lot of things happen, and they have multiple avenues to do it.
Chris, I mean, you left out the biggest one. I mean, it's not only the remainder of that Hayward TPE. Even Brad said, I'm not going to let Evan Fournier walk away without getting another huge traded player exception. It's like the TPE it's the modern day Nets pick for us now.
And it's the gift that keeps on giving for writers because not only do I have to write 7 times a year what a TPE is and like how it works and how it can't be combined with other outgoing salary. I do enjoy that there'll be another 12 months of speculation about, could they go get, I don't know if Harrison Barnes fits in it anymore, but all those sort of fun options about what can they do with $17.1 million. And the speculation will never end. I just swing it. Like, can they go get Kyle Anderson? Can they give the Grizzlies something that gets me the power forward that I think they need and uses those exceptions? So it's all about flexibility and options. And the Celtics with Zarin and those guys, just like always trying to find a way to get a little something. That's how good teams sort of maximize all their assets.
Yeah, I wondered. My buddy Landman, who's been on this show before as, kind of a voice of the fan, maybe a cynical fan, if he's out there listening, I'm sure he is he was, after that TPE, he was constantly texting me, what about Larry Nance? Go get Larry Nance. And obviously he's since been dealt, but that was one of those types of guys that I wondered, how quickly Brad would turn around and try and use that thing.
And the balance is like, they can't use a whole bunch of their first round picks, right? Because if you are plotting to get a Bradley Beal or a player of that ilk, you need all your future first round picks because the only way you're trading for someone of that stature is to overwhelm a team with future picks. And, so that's that. But here's how they do it. They go and take Josh Richardson or Dennis Schroder or whoever and try to flip them for assets. Now, Schroder, less value because the team probably thinks he's not going to be there long term, but there's ways to get value for these guys, and I'm intrigued to see what how the dominoes fall from here, because I just think they put themselves in good position to sort of stockpile that now barren treasure chest of draft picks.
So it was a few years back, maybe longer, handful of years back. I'm trying to remember. You'll remember. It was the great debate of the 16th spot. Like, who are they going to keep at number 15 and cut loose? Is it going to be
James
Young and someone else?
And who beat out James Young? Oh, this is so bad. They all blend together at this point. It was funny because I was looking back, and I was talking. I wrote this week about Grant Williams, and I was a little surprised he didn't play in summer league, but I also understood it. But usually about this time of year, the Celtics are pretty good for player X has gained 15 pounds of muscle and is going to be like a whole different player this year.
Exactly.
And maybe it's Tatum based on Instagram photos, but like Grant Williams could use a hype article about how he's added 15 pounds of muscle and is ready to better play the 4 and 5 spot. But yeah, like it is funny how we obsess about spots 15 and 16, and really doesn't matter. I'm assuming it was like who came back, that the kid from Georgia whose dad fell off.
Hunter.
Yes, RJ Hunter. So I don't know if he was the one who beat it. I don't think it was, but the point is, like, every year we obsess about RJ Hunter and James Youngs of the world, and it's just like it's just a little bit of a it's just it's fun to think about. It's the same way we obsess about backup quarterbacks. But probably. Well, so I'm assuming you're angling here. Who do you think makes the
and that's that is where I'm angling, is less so like who do you think spot number 15, more so who do you think the odd man out is, because Brad's made it a point to say, look, we got 16 guaranteed contracts right now. And I guess one thing that, like, my natural inclination comes down to two guys, probably the same for you: Carson Edwards, Jabari Parker. Those are the two guys that you would instantly think of. But by the same token, and again, like, where there's smoke, maybe there's fire. There was a lot of talk after the trade was made. Would Chris Dunn actually be on this team, or would he be flipped? Would he be traded away? So what do you think? How do you think this plays out, long before training camp?
Yeah, like when they first got Chris Dunn, I said they need point guard depth. Like, they need someone behind Marcus and Pritchard, and I thought there might be a role for him. But now you're at Schroder, and it's harder to find minutes. Like, I'm worried about minutes for Pritchard. How do you find minutes for Dunn?
Right.
And if you're going to have any of these reclamation projects, they do need minutes. So I do wonder him, Bruno Fernando, whoever you would have to necessarily package. Who is the most enticing of that group that can get you that power forward you might covet? Can you throw some combination of players and your TPE and maybe a draft pick and go get Kyle Anderson? And if you do that, do you need Grant Williams and Jabari Parker? So I think the dominoes
still think
will
there's
fall.
a chance at a bigger move before the season.
Yeah, I do. I think their desire to add for this offseason was not for a lack of trying. Like, I think we heard at the start they were interested in the Jeff Greens of the world, and I think they're still looking. But a lot of rosters are settled right now. It might depend on who shakes available as teams start trimming. Might be like, does Grizzlies look up and say, is it better for us to get an asset now for Kyle Anderson, or whatever your obsession is. Like, I part of the reason they couldn't go get a Larry Nance is they didn't want to give up the picks that would require to go get that player. So I do think there's some trickle down still to happen. But let's say that, like, let's put that aside and say, like, there's just not another move out there. Who is the last cut? That's more intriguing to me, because I don't know. Like, I think it's easy to say Jabari because he's not guaranteed before the season starts, but there's always something about, hey, this guy's former number 2 pick. Like, he might figure it out. It's a position of need for them. Who are you banking on? Do you want to roll with Jabari? Do you want to roll with Grant? I think Carson, you always just hold out hope that the shooting's going to come around. Like, Danny Ainge was just always believed that he'd figure it out eventually, and sometimes it does just take time. Like, I'm not bullish on that. But would you rather roll the dice on Carson Edwards, or what is Bruno Fernando's role on this team? So I don't know. It all comes down to, like, what they can do. But if I think if push came to shove and Brad had to decide on the roster, today, it's probably the non-guaranteed guys that has to go, just because you don't want to. With their, especially with their cap situation, they can't just be eating contracts at this point. But also not a lot of money to move. I think they'd more likely make a deal where multiple players come out, one player comes back, something like that. So yeah, I think there's one more shoe to drop before this thing gets cooking.
Chris, in the last few days, obviously the Nets have added Paul Millsap, and as we know, they are.
Do they have hold on? Do they have 24 roster spots? Did I miss like some exception?
I know that's another team's gonna really cut some back into the roster guys, and not to mention like LaMarcus Aldridge, if he comes out of retirement, he's going to Brooklyn. Which I don't know if you saw this tweet, just a great tweet that these old decrepit geriatric Nets and Lakers right now, with 11 guys who were all-stars between them in the 2015 season. Okay. Six years ago, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, James Harden, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, Blake Griffin, Aldridge, if he comes out, Paul Millsap, Marc Gasol, who I completely forgot about. It's just it's a wild group between these two teams, and we can tease and make fun of how old they are, and like even Rondo going back to the Lakers being like the fifth oldest guy in the team, and he's been in the league for 35 years. You can't ignore the fact that these are still they're the two betting favorites to win the championship. So it's not like there's some sort of lack of respect on these two teams.
And I don't begrudge any of these guys. Like if I'm LaMarcus Aldridge and what he's been through with this, having to shut it down last year and the heart concerns, like I'm perfectly content to go sit on the bench and hope that my team's that wins a title and that you're just a small part of it. My initial reaction is probably something I'm going to write on is just, I wonder, when do the Celtics get to that point? Like when do Jayson and Jaylen and whatever the core here is attractive enough? We know the weather, despite this beautiful sunshine that I'm trying to soak up, because I know how fleeting it is in these parts. The weather's never going to attract people here, and the banners only bring so much. So when do they get to the point where they're desirable enough talent and they're in the championship mix enough that the veteran guys are like, I'm going to go to Boston? And I think there's guys that would, think about it. But if you have the option of going to the Brooklyn Nets super team or sitting there and watching LeBron and AD go nuts, like it's an easy decision. I get it. I totally get it. But the Millsap one did sting because that was a player the Celtics thirsted for a couple years ago. Was one of their top priorities in free agency, and just sort of missed out on him when he decided to go back to Denver. I think even at his age and even as that skills erode, that's a position of need for the Celtics. I would have been really curious how it looked with him at that 4 spot, and even if it was a backup option. But even LaMarcus is funny because Ime Udoka was the one who recruited him to San Antonio.
Right.
And so I thought if he came out of retirement, I thought there would be some consideration. Celtics really don't need another lumbering 5, but it's still like surprising that some of these guys aren't like, and maybe it's just the roster thing. These teams, hey, you can go sit there and you're not gonna have to play a whole lot and do what you do, and you'll get your opportunities because Kyrie is gonna disappear for a couple of games, and Durant's gonna need some downtime, and Harden's gonna get injured at some point. So you get your opportunity. But I wonder when that will shift for the Celtics, and guys will start every summer. It's oh man, former All-Star X wants to go just sit on the Boston bench and be their PJ Brown and all that.
So to be fair to, kind of like to acknowledge when we're wrong, right? We're not impenetrable when it comes to takes or whatever else. I crapped on the Nets a lot going into last year, Chris, because I honestly, and it wasn't, like Durant sucks, Irving sucks, or it was, I just felt that ultimately that team was more likely to combust because of personality than thrive because of talent. That was how I looked at that group. And quite frankly, I doubled down on that when they added James Harden. I thought like, this is your group. And again, not a lack of talent. It was just like, you got 3 guys who like, what's going to motivate them? What is going to motivate this trio to actually go out and coexist and win a championship? Like this 3 is not, some of the other big 3s we have seen combined around the league in years past, going back to the Pierce Allen KG era. But obviously that was not their downfall. Injuries were their downfall, or Kevin Durant's shoe size was their downfall. But, that it's not, I can't even make fun. It's not their fault they went down in round 2. They were not this colossal failure. There were external factors that just got in the way. And that happens to good teams. You look at them now, and they are remarkably, they're so much deeper than even they were last year because of obviously a guy like Millsap. Now you have Griffin, if he's not a shell of himself there all year. You got those 3 guys from the start, hopefully healthy. Right. Patty Mills and Aldridge, if he comes, back, it's a great group there in Brooklyn. And it's hard not to just feel totally panicked about that as a Celtics fan in terms of, where you are in the East with respect to actually trying to get over the hump.
Absolutely fair. And so first off, like to your larger point, like talent is king. I know we obsess about like, will teams get along and how is this going to work? And there's not enough basketballs, but at the end of the day, you get 3 superstar players, like it figures itself out. And they certainly weren't perfect at times, but man, they are fantastic. And like, it's daunting coming into this year about how good they can be. And I don't have a good answer for you. Like if you're a Celtics fan, you're hopeful, not hoping for injuries, but you're hopeful that something is an impediment for them in how they navigate forward. But I don't know. It's gonna take an awful lot. I hate to say there's prohibitive favorites when you go into a season because weird stuff happens and injuries happen and the league gets weird. But yeah, like the Nets are really good. The Bucks probably won't be as dominant during the regular season, but they're going to be very good. The Lakers should be really good. If you're a Celtics fan, it's all on Jaylen and Jayson going to another level and trying to get into that mix. If you're gonna throw yourself into the title contention.
Chris, so I got to let you in on something. We were joking about this with Gary Washburn when he was on with us last week. There is no safer bet when it comes to the Celtics Beat podcast. I'm not kidding. There is no safer bet than breaking news relating to the Celtics happening right after you record. Okay.
What do we got?
Always. Well, guess what? We actually have news during the recording of the show. We got a Celtics trade. Adrian Wojnarowski 2 minutes ago. Memphis has agreed to trade forward Juancho Hernangomez to Boston for Chris Dunn, Carson Edwards, and a 2026 second-round pick.
All right. Well, there's your consolidating trade. Like, I please run this episode in full so I sound smart talking about a Memphis trade. Now,
we will do with no edits, no cuts. And we're both right. Dunn and Edwards are both gone.
So I did not think Hernangomez would be the guy they'd target. Tells me that the price for Kyle Anderson was probably a little bit too high. But look, there's a consolidating move, a player that fits your needs a little bit more. Intrigued to see how that worked. Like look, now the roster's set, and
25 years old. He's a 4.
Yeah,
guy that averaged.
He's had his moments.
Yeah, I mean he's not this prolific scorer or anything.
I seem to recall him having some good games against the Celtics too, which is like sometimes key in guys they target. Like when they got Moses Brown, and we laughed about how he had the 2020 game against them.
Sure, like if we obsess over this with Robert Williams, so we may as well at least mention it with Hernangomez. He's 15-8 per 36, Perfect. At least last year.
Yeah. So again, I don't know. I don't necessarily say immediately like he's ahead of Grant Williams and Jabari Parker on the depth chart, but. That was a position of need, and it was more of a need than Carson Edwards was trying to crack the rotation at the wing spot, or Chris Dunn finding a role, and so those guys will get a chance. Like I think Chris Dunn could, like in the right situation, could revitalize himself, and I'm hopeful maybe he'll find that down there. Maybe Carson in just getting turned loose will figure it out, and maybe we'll look back and say, oh, the Celtics should have gave him more minutes and all that. But I think this is a move that gets you to 15. Still don't know if that will be the 15 they carry in. I think now they think, okay, Grant, Hernangomez, and Jabari, like there could still be some wiggling there, but if nothing else, they're positioned to enter the year with this roster.
Looking to see if there's anything else Woj has to add. You never know. Says deal can't be formally announced until September 15th. Dunn and Edwards contracts are allowed to be aggregated in the trade at that point. So it's looming, it's coming, but I swear, like normally we would have signed off 10 minutes ago, and that's when we would have to.
And then it happens.
That's when
it's funny because we were going to record a podcast. Celtics Talk was going to record a podcast today too, and that would have been the kiss of death because nothing has outdated myself quite like me recording a podcast. Same deal. Like it's just we probably have the same record schedule where we're just like, let's get this done in the morning. Boom, trade.
Yeah, always without fail. It's interesting. I like that they're adding a guy who's, kind of a young vet, for lack of a better way of putting it. Denver, Minnesota, again, just 25 years old.
He's been around.
Yeah, he's been around, but he's, I mean, he's not terribly durable. There have been some injuries there, 17, 18, he only played 25 games. 2020 season obviously was shortened because of the pandemic to begin with, but he was, with the both teams there last year, limited to 52 games. So we'll see. But I mean, you're still talking about a former, just outside the lottery. It was a 15th overall pick a handful of years ago.
No, look, now I have something to write. I'm thrilled.
Yeah,
I guess I got to go to work.
Apparently. All right. So that in mind, and we're going to let you go here, but as we were talking about back to school before and summer being over and the Celtics season being a month away, what's back to school for a writer look like here? Or back to the season? Like, do you get a new laptop? Do you, a new notebook, a new microphone for your podcast? What do you do?
I told the story on Celtics Talk. I got a new Apple Watch because I lost mine jumping off an inflatable bouncy house in a lake when Robert Williams signed. Yeah, and so, I think I'll call Evan and try and get some snazzy looking blazers for the TV shows this year. I'll probably, maybe I get some back to school sneakers. I need to upgrade my kick game. Not great at that, but I'll get some Skechers or something. I don't know, like not Skechers, Vans. That's what my latest obsession as I try to be Dennis Schroder and skateboard and all that. So I don't know.
The skater sneakers. Those are the ones you need.
But like I said, I just want to soak up the sunshine before we're stuck in gymnasiums and arenas and studios and all that. So
you make it look good, my friend. Don't worry about it. Our thanks to Evan Valenti, not with us on the show, but certainly with us in spirit, and also the one
he's the one who helped us break that news.
He's the one that we credit for. Otherwise we would have signed off, and the news would have just passed us by. So thanks to Evan for actually alerting us of that. Again, for Forsberg, I'm Adam Kaufman. Join us again next week when we will be that much closer to the season. Chris, we'll catch up again soon. Thanks, man.
Take care.